The Dental Download Podcast is your source for insight into dental school, conversations with dentists, specialists, and leaders in the industry. With new episodes every Monday morning, I'm your host, Haley Schultz. Let's get into this week's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Download Podcast. I thought this week I would do a recap of my D2 fall semester, but instead I'm going to save that for the next solo episode, so in 2 weeks. And this week we're going to keep it really timely with the new year and talk about some of my goals for 2022, and maybe that can make you a little bit more motivated going into this new year. And I'm also going to look back on the goals that I could find in my phone that I wrote down for 2021. I'm pretty sure I shared them in this podcast too back then last January, but I'm going to share them again, kind of talk through how what I'm doing this year is different than last year, and let you all know where my head is at going into another year of life, but more specifically, I guess, a new semester of dental school. And that's really the gist of this week's episode, letting you know a little bit of what's coming up for the rest of January and some of the things exciting happening in the new year for the podcast. As I said, this week is New Year's goals, New Year mindset. Next week, we have a dentist from Instagram, Dr. Tara. She works in Ohio, but she went to dental school at Tufts, and she's from Florida, so she has a wide perspective to offer there, but she's more of a new grad, so definitely can give us the job search tips, the entering dentistry right after COVID tips, so that'll be an interesting episode next week. Then I'm going to do that semester recap still. That way you can all hear how D2 fall went. And then we'll have some more guests, another dentist that focuses on Invisalign, cosmetics, family dentistry, and also sleep apnea. So that was an interesting conversation, and she's a mom, she's a practice owner, so we talk through her experiences there. I have a lot of dental students coming up this semester on the podcast, as well as some more dentists themselves, and hopefully we'll get some dental business in there, some finance, and I'm also bringing back Steven and Hamza, if you all are familiar with those two dentists that I've had on each individually and once as a duo. I'm bringing them back on again as a duo, and I think Hamza on again as a solo after that. They're going to talk more about now their updates in their careers pretty much, because last time we talked to them, I can try to put a link to that episode in the bottom of this episode, but basically we talked about salaries that you can expect as a grad, the difference between working in corporate, private, federally qualified health center. So we talk about that scope of things, but now Hamza has switched into a new office, moved to a new place, and Steven's been in the FQHC for longer. At the time, he was just a graduate and about to start there. So new perspectives building on conversations I've had with them in the past, and I'm recording all these episodes that I'm speaking about with the different dentists, with the dental students, most of them this upcoming week. So it's Sunday when I'm recording this all for you, the day before it goes up, and I have like 4 podcasts or something scheduled to record this week, and those just go up every Monday. As you know, I tend to alternate between solo episodes and episodes with guests, so gonna keep that format going into 2022, and that's kind of the outlook for the podcast coming up here. I hope you're all excited. I appreciate you all for listening in every week if you do, or sporadically if you do. I still appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the podcast takes us this year, what we can learn this year, who we can connect with, and I wish you all the best. But for now, let's get into the episode about my goals for 2022. Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily and then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. Here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right away from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, but also everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available, and you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Did I mention it is totally free, no catch? I've been using Spotify for podcasters since the very beginning of my show, and now we're nearing our 200th episode. So I can definitely say it's an easy platform, and I've really loved using it. So be sure to download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. New Year's goals, New Year's resolutions, new year, new me. We've heard it all before. We've probably thought it before ourselves, even though it's admittedly a little cheesy. But honestly, I don't see anything wrong with that extra hope, that extra motivation that a lot of us get when it's a new year. Of course, it's a little corny to say, I'm not going to start this until January 1st. I personally don't really give into that. Like, I had certain goals that I wrote on here, and I've been trying to work on them actually for the past maybe like week or two before January even came around, just because I was reflecting on my past year and thinking about what do I want to do differently in 2022? What do I want to add to it? So as soon as I realized that there were these things I wanted to do, I tried to start doing them. I wasn't necessarily waiting for January 1st to kick off anything crazy, but honestly, my goals, if we'll say, are not that crazy in my opinion. I think they're all very realistic for me and things that are very necessary for me. But before I go through the goals that I have, I want to specify the difference between what I have to share with you today and what I wrote down last year for my 2021 goals. So I'll go through the 2021 ones and tell you how those went in a second, but the difference here is that what I'm working on this year is more so a state of being and a just like how I would define myself in a way, not like rebranding as a lot of people on TikTok like to say. I think that's a little creepy because we are humans, not businesses. We don't need to brand ourselves necessarily, unless you're trying to do that for your dental practice, which very fair. But I feel like I'm trying to reframe the way I see myself, the way that I speak like to myself internally, the way I just kind of approach life, not dramatically, but just trying to make some small improvements that I think are going to, in the long run, really serve me and just make me a happier, healthier person. But the big difference is that I wouldn't necessarily say these are goals for 2021. They're more so habits. So you'll hear that as kind of a reoccurring thing as I go through each of these areas. So the areas for 2022 are academic, and then mental, and then physical, then my relationships, and then just like my daily thoughts. Those are the areas I'll talk to you all about in a few moments. But before we get into the 2022 items, I did want to, like I said, talk to you a little bit about 2021 and not necessarily recap the year or anything, because if you keep up with me on here, you're pretty familiar, at least of the portion of my life that I share on the podcast. You're pretty up to date on what's been going on with me in 2021. And especially if you keep up with me on YouTube and Instagram, you're even more up to date. I would say those are the platforms that I talk the most about non-dental things, would definitely be my Instagram and my YouTube page, but they're still kind of dental because they're my life as a dental student, but they're not speaking for all dental students, if that makes sense to you. But they're great platforms to check out. Again, my name is Haley Schultz, so you can just look that up on any platform and you should be able to find me. But those 2021 goals, the reason I'm beating around the bush here is because I was a little disappointed. I just looked them up a few hours ago before I was going to record this episode, and I was like, what did I even write down? How'd I do? And I didn't do that great. It's not that I missed the mark on everything. It's just they were like very specific metrics. And I think my issue was I'd always heard, you know what, your goals need to be specific. They need to be measurable. And that's what I tried to do. But the downside of that is if you don't hit the exact number, then you failed. Which I'm not letting that make me too upset or anything or disappointed, but it was just a little funny, honestly, looking at it, because I was like, wow, these numbers, I didn't get there, but that's okay. So I will share those goals. So the first thing was 10 minutes of movement a day, and I could take this a few ways to say whether I did or didn't accomplish it. I would say most days I had at least 10 minutes of exercise because I walked to school a lot, but I know that there were certain weekend days where I really didn't leave the house much. Like, yeah, maybe I walked to my car, drove somewhere, walked around a grocery store, came back, and like, yeah, I was walking for 10 minutes, but I meant like intentional exercise, whether it was yoga, whether it was an intentional walk, whether it was actual cardio or strength training. And I don't think I did that. Like, there wasn't intention behind moving 10 minutes a day. So therefore, I would say I didn't really hit that, at least in the way that I meant it when I wrote it down as a goal for last year. The other one is cook a meal at home 3 nights a week. I would assume I did this. Again, I was making these measurable goals, but I wasn't necessarily checking in on myself if I was doing them. Like, last January seems like so long ago. I was living in a totally different space. I still had one of the same roommates, but just like a very different environment, being in a lockdown semester, I'm pretty sure. Maybe we were back in lab. I don't even really remember. It was like just a weird time, and I think I spent a ton of time at home because most things in Michigan were still closed, and obviously I had to cook at home because we didn't go anywhere or do anything. So I'm pretty sure I met this goal, but again, I think my intent behind the goal, which is what was lacking, and I think that's why this year my way of going about these changes for the new year, thinking more in terms of habits, is better because it's letting me think about what am I doing every single day to get me here, and also letting me reflect about the why behind it, because I think my why behind cook a meal at home 3 nights a week was saving money, sure, but also trying to eat healthier, but I didn't necessarily put that in the goal. Like, my 3 nights a week was trying to be very specific and measurable, but when it's lacking the why, it just doesn't have the depth, I think. So again, I think I accomplished that one, which is good, I suppose. And then the next two are related to, actually the next 4 are related to content and what I do with social media platforms and this podcast. So the first was to post a podcast every week. I am 99% sure I hit this goal except for the week that I lost my voice. So I'm pretty sure I posted a podcast every single week, and I just skipped the 1 week that I lost my voice. But Dental Download Podcast has been going strong. I think this is episode like 90 or 91, 91 or 92, because I know last week with Dr. Tesser was 90. So this is probably 91. And that means I've been doing this for 92 weeks, which is pretty cool, especially if any of you have been listening since the beginning. That is pretty impressive, I would say. So that was a goal that I did keep up with, and I'm happy that I did. The podcast is something that I feel like I get a lot of benefit from personally, but it comes in waves. Like, when I'm not actively recording an episode with a guest, I don't necessarily look forward to the podcast as much as I maybe do YouTube or Instagram. But what keeps me coming back and keeps me creating episodes is those moments when I do connect with dentists or dental students and do sit down and record an episode. I just feel so inspired and motivated, and it really just reignites that passion for dentistry for me, that like thoughts buzzing around my head at 1,000,000 miles per minute. Like, oh, where am I going to work one day? What kind of practice am I going to have? What potential is there for this, then that thing, for business and for growing wealth and for taking care of a family I'll have one day, taking care of patients? What kind of different technology can I integrate? Like, all these thoughts swirling around my mind whenever I get to talk to awesome dentists and awesome dental students because of this podcast. So it may not be something that I think about day to day in the same way that I do YouTube or Instagram, especially Instagram, because I do post stories like every day about what's going on in dental school. But the podcast is something really special and something that I'm excited to continue on the rest of dental school, and hopefully as I transition into working as a dentist in just about 2 years, like a little over 2 years. And the last one that was related to YouTube, I'll just lump these two together. One was to get approved for Magic Links, which is basically a affiliate platform. And I don't even know why I wrote this on here because I never did anything about it. So basically you apply and then they either send you an email like accepting you, or they tell you, oh, not right now, we'll let you know if we think you reach the threshold. But they basically told me no a long time ago, and I never followed up because I'm assuming I haven't met said threshold. Like, you can't reapply, you have to just wait and see if they ever email you. So I don't really know why I wrote that one on there, but I do have an affiliate links company reward style that I use for YouTube that is basically the same thing. So I'm not too down about that one because I have another way to make like 1% or like 0.5% of revenue if someone makes a purchase through one of my affiliate links, but that doesn't happen that often, so it makes me like a few dollars every few months. So it's really nothing too significant. Just like this podcast really is not an income source. It's purely for making connections with you all, with dental students and with dentists and other people in the industry, and putting that out there for you. Like, yes, I get to have these conversations and get to know these people one-on-one, but hopefully you also feel like you're connecting with these dentists and speakers that I have on here and with myself when I do these personal episodes, because I do want to be a resource for you and I want to share more resources than just myself, because of course I'd like to think that I know a thing or two about dental school and about life as I'm going through it as just a young 20-year-old here. 23, but young 20s is what I was getting at. I still recognize that there are so many more opinions and life experiences out there, and that's why I wanted this platform to bring those amazing people to light and to bring them to you all, the listeners, to learn from, because I can only speak for myself and my own experiences, and I feel like that's a disservice if someone is relying purely on me for everything when it comes to their goals and their thoughts about dentistry. So that's a little tidbit about the podcast, I suppose. And the last thing, super random. Eat a vegetable every day. Super specific, and it's a shame to say there probably were a good amount of days in 2021 that I didn't eat a single vegetable. I honestly think most days I probably did, because they sneak in there even on like unhealthy food sometimes. Like, you'll have a piece of pizza, but it'll have like peppers on it, or you'll have it like mixed in with your breakfast and not even think about it. But again, it was the intention and the why behind these goals I think we're missing, and that's why I think that these goals for 2022, again, not even really goals, these habits, these mindsets are hopefully going to be a lot better. I don't know, it's like a total 180 of setting specific measurable goals and now going for more mindset, living like the person you want to be type of habits for 2022. So we'll see which works better for me. I can compare in 2023 which of these two ways of setting goals or setting changes that you want to make, which one pays off better. I think I was also thinking about the book Atomic Habits when I was writing this list a little bit, because right in the title, Atomic Habits, they really emphasize in that book that you have to think of yourself as the type of person that you want to be. So if you want to be a runner, every decision that you make should be the decision that a runner would make, not the decision that you maybe innately would make. So it's not a question whether you're going to get up and run today because you're a runner. Of course you're going to run, even though maybe that's not who you were or whatever. But eventually, by making those choices, you kind of become that person. And that's just a really specific example, but it can be anything. It can be like a mindful person or something like that. But let's get into my goals here before we ramble for too long about the past, because we're looking ahead, we're looking to the future, we're getting excited for a new year, a year of opportunities. And honestly, I'm not going to talk about it in this episode, but my upcoming semester is crazy. And I will give a little tidbit to that in the next solo episode's intro, but it's just going to be a big transition because we're getting back to partially in-person classes. Like, I have probably 2 in-person classes every day plus a lab, which is like 3 hours. So really like 5 or 6 hours of in-person class every day except for Tuesdays. So it's going to be a big change to what my dental school has been doing the whole, what have I been here, 5 semesters or something so far? Yeah, I think I've done 5. This will be my 6th. So the past 5 semesters have been either completely online right when I started or completely online other than sim lab and assisting. So now we're really getting into normal school and I'm a little frightened, but 2022 Haley has some ways of hopefully working through that and attacking the year in a relaxed and mindful and positive way, hopefully. Okay, so I know I've been leading up to this the whole episode. So what are my habits or focuses for 2022? Like I said, I have it academic, mental mindset, and then physical, and then my relationships and my daily thoughts. So I'll start with academic because it's the least juicy, to be honest. So habits or mindset with academia, with school, dental school for this year is honestly just making it through. And I don't even mean that for all of 2022 because in 2022, I will become a patient care provider, a sole patient care provider with being overseen by the clinic faculty. But I'll be the one performing dentistry on patients 3, 4, 5 days a week. Absolutely mind-boggling. And quite frankly, I can't wrap my head around that yet. Like, I know it's coming and I honestly feel ready, which in its own way scares me that I'm not more nervous. I'm sure once it's closer, I'll be more nervous, but I just feel like we've been preparing for this for so long. So part of me feels ready, which seems like so naive to say, but we'll see how I feel come the end of this term. But because I have this tough semester that I mentioned earlier in the episode ahead of me, I just can't conceptualize that latter part of 2022. This semester is going to end in April, and then starting in May up until December, so 2 more semesters in this year, I'll be treating patients and having like 3 classes a semester, but it'll pretty much be patient care the whole time. So I can't even really wrap my head around that part of 2022 that's coming up in dental school. So when I was writing down what I'm going to focus on academically, I really could only think about this one semester and just getting through this semester. It seems tough. It's going to be so weird that our last semester of coursework, like full coursework, 5 days a week coursework, is slowly transitioning back to partially in person. So I don't know how I feel about it. I'm obviously have mentioned many times in the show that I want to be in person. I'm going to learn better in person. I'm going to be more motivated. It'll force me to pay attention. I can't pause and check my phone, things like that. So I know it's going to be a good thing, but of course, change is scary. Having to do more work is scary, but as you're going to hear throughout the rest of my habits and mindsets for this year, that's something I'm working on anyways. So I think it's going to be okay. But I would just say one specific thing, other than as basic as it sounds to just get through it, one specific thing, and I've mentioned this before, is try to have a dedicated study evening where I go outside of my house and study somewhere. So ideally that would be the library. It's called Taubman. If you're coming to Michigan or you go here, it's the med student. So I think it's med, nursing, and dental have access to it with our like student IDs. So it's not as busy and it's definitely more of a grad student vibe. But to spend one night a week there, ideally studying, I think would be great because when I'm at home, I probably could do double the amount of work in the time that I sit down and study because I just take breaks, I go get snacks, I check my phone, I do other things because home is not the most productive environment because it's also the environment that you eat, that you sleep, that you socialize. So obviously if I get out of that environment and get in a fully academic environment, I'm just going to get more done more quickly. So hopefully I can do one evening a week after classes at either staying at the dental school, at the library, even at a coffee shop. Honestly, I will take anything if I'm able to do it. just because I know it'll give me more time to do the other things that I want to do and just make the rest of my life easier. Like I said, if I'm being more efficient when I'm studying, and I think that would happen if I get out of my house. The next thing, like I said, is mindset. And for me, so the thing that I want is to become more mindful. And when I think of mindfulness, I think of gratitude, I think of optimism, and I think of someone that's not shooken up by anxiety. And those are very lofty goals and hard things to accomplish on stressful days, on sad days, on busy days. But that's what I want to do. I want to become someone that is at least more mindful than I have been in the past. And how do I plan to do that? Well, I'm hoping and planning and that's what I gotta say, not hoping, I will be spending more time in silence. So when I'm not with people, when I'm just having some time alone, whether I'm studying or in between classes, like online classes if I'm still home, or just anything, and there's a dead moment, nothing going on, usually a lot of us, including myself, grab for our phones, or we put a podcast on, we put some music on, we watch a video, just something, so we're not sitting in silence. We don't want to be just sitting, doing nothing. But I will be making the conscious decision to spend time in those silent moments, just see what happens. And the reason I think a lot of us avoid those moments of silence is because we're afraid of what's going to pop into our heads. We're afraid of feeling awkward if maybe we're in public. We're afraid of maybe becoming worried about whatever's coming up next. And usually we're using those downtimes to distract ourselves. But the only way to really practice mindfulness and to get comfortable with those moments is to sit in them and to allow it to happen, allow those uncomfortable feelings to happen, and slowly you'll get more comfortable with them. You'll realize they're not so bad. You'll realize that feeling worried about an upcoming something isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a natural instinct. It's how our bodies are increasing their preparedness for whatever's about to happen, because you know it's a big thing, it's an exciting thing, it's an important thing, whatever it may be, and your body's just getting ready. So basically, I'm hoping to spend more time when those little moments pop up throughout the day and just take like a moment to just sit and be, rather than reach for my phone, try to do something to distract myself. But in addition to that, obviously I can't control how often those times pop up. They're probably going to pop up more than I realize. But I'm also hoping to read at night instead of watching videos on my phone. I'm definitely a big TikTok scroller or YouTube watcher, so I would love to read a chapter a night, at least for a little bit, till I get more comfortable with falling to sleep alone. I feel like when I'm not like talking to people before I go to bed, like if I just have a couple hours of studying and then I'm just going to bed and like I didn't do a phone call or anything, I can feel quite stressed from the day. Like if nothing helps me relax and then I'm just on my phone, it's always a tough time, and I have to use like a sleep meditation podcast or put on songs like sleep music to fall asleep, and that's not ideal. I would love to be able to just feel more peaceful if there's times that I haven't been able to unwind by connecting with someone that's important in my life, friends, family, whoever. I'd like to be able to kind of self-soothe and take care of myself in that way. So I'm hoping that by reading, maybe having a little cup of tea. I bought the like sleepy time tea from Trader Joe's, which is literally just a normal tea with no caffeine, but it's all about the mindset and the ambiance. I think the concept of reading rather than the actual act of reading, I think, is what's going to help me feel relaxed before bed. So I'm looking forward to that. But really, it's that spending time in silence and trying to reframe negative emotions and either look at them differently or just straight up be like, okay, this is irrational, something might go wrong, but all these other things might go right, and to try to put more optimism and gratitude into those moments. The next thing, as I mentioned, is the physical. So I think everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have goals every year about getting in shape, getting more consistent with a workout routine or the food that they're fueling their bodies with, what have you. And honestly, all those things sound great to me. But what I'm really going to focus on is building physical strength. So like actual weightlifting, body weight workouts, trying to like fully fatigue myself at the gym. I'm like fairly consistent. The only times that I really fell off the train of working out is when I was sick. So if I got a bad cold or something, I would be out of the gym for like a week and a half or so. But other than that, the few times I've had colds, I really go three or four times a week, I feel like. So the consistency is there. I'm just not pushing myself. So I'm hoping that this year I can stick to a workout plan and really be tracking the measurements of how much I'm lifting in certain exercises and just trying to get stronger, because it's been enjoyable for me. Like I said, I started some of these goals earlier on than just the new year. So it's been enjoyable for me to push myself and to see progress in that way, that like I can lift more in these certain muscles of mine that apparently have almost no strength, like my hamstrings, my biceps, my shoulders. Like I very much struggle with those weight workouts. I could do like the bare minimum of the levels of weights, but it's getting better, and I feel like it is a challenge for myself in such a good way, because it can kind of translate into other areas of my life. Sure, it's weightlifting, it's building strength, but it's the fact that it's doing the workouts that I'm least comfortable with. It's not doing legs and squats and things that for me are things that are more easy strength-wise. It's doing hamstring workouts. It's doing upper body, trying to do a push-up, which I cannot do a push-up, which I really would hope that by 2023 I can do a push-up if I'm going to be working this hard on building strength. But just by doing those exercises, I'm challenging myself outside of my comfort zone. And I'd like to think that when I prove to myself that I can do these things that are scary for me, not even like fearful scary, but just I would avoid them, because why would I do something that's so hard when I can go to the gym and do something that's easy but still technically counts? Like technically I did cardio and legs or just cardio, so I did it, that's great. And yes, it is great. I don't want to discredit movement. It's all great for you. But there's something to be said about really fatiguing your muscles, really pushing yourself, really trying to get stronger, that I think is going to pay off for me in more ways than one, not just physically. So I'm looking forward to that challenge this year. And the last two are relationships and my daily thoughts. So relationships is another one that's not too juicy. I'm honestly very happy with the relationships in my life. One of my best friends, one of my best friends is moving to a different state this year, so that'll be a little bit of a change, and I'm hoping that our relationship stays nice and strong, but it'll be an adjustment. And I think my main priority with these relationships is just to continue the balance that I've had of splitting time between socializing with people in dental school, staying in Ann Arbor, trying to hang out with people, and then leaving, going home, going to visit my boyfriend, going to see my family, whatever it may be, and fostering those relationships that I built prior to dental school or outside of dental school. So I just would really love to continue growing closer with my roommates here at school, and then friends and family outside of my program, and just keeping that a priority. I think it's something I was doing well, so I think it's kind of a habit that I've already developed and found a good consistency for, so I'm not seeing a reason to change anything, but it's something I want to keep in mind and not let falter while I work on improving these other areas of my life. The last thing is one that I thought would be nice to end with, because I think it's something most people can really work on and would serve them well, and that's just thinking better about yourself, speaking more kindly to yourself in your head, speaking to yourself like you do to your best friend, not like your biggest critic, because it just like doesn't make any sense. We have only ourselves. We were brought into this world as ourselves with our specific traits and appearances and abilities, and you can always work to improve yourself in all of those ways, but you're you. There's no one else like you, so there's no point in trying to be like the person next to you or trying to just change yourself in a way that's not genuine, in a way that you don't actually want. And like I was saying with these goals for 2021, they were lacking the why. I think if you don't have a strong why for anything in life, your goals, goals in terms of professional, I think is more so what I was thinking, like your why dentistry, that personal statement prompt that we all loved so much. But if you don't have a strong why for what you're setting out to do with your career, what you're setting out to do with your relationships, what you're setting out to do physically, mentally, it's just gonna leave you feeling empty, even if you do accomplish something, if you didn't really have a reason internally. Does that make sense? So I would just say that being more kind to yourself is so important, and that's something I'm going to continue working on in 2022, trying to write more affirmations. I have this wellness journal that I kind of stopped using after September-ish, so I want to pick that up again, start using. It's like a planning wellness journal. You kind of track different fitness things, but you write like daily gratitudes, daily affirmations, and if you don't know an affirmation, it's saying like, I am blank. So you could say, I am caring. You could even say like loved. I am accepting of others. I am wise, like whatever. And they feel weird to say because no one likes to be boastful. I feel like we're brought up in a society that talks about being humble, trying to like not overhype yourself. You don't want to come off as boastful or thinking that you're too great. But especially if you're only talking to yourself, if you're not talking to others, why not be boastful? Why not hype yourself up? Because confidence is so important. Confidence carries us so far in life. Confidence gives you the willpower to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to take on challenges in life because you feel like you can handle them. You feel like you're deserving of them. That's a big thing. Like imposter syndrome is a big thing a lot of people deal with in dentistry and dental school. I have an episode about that as well that I'll try to link below. It's like comparison imposter syndrome if you want to look it up. But all of that is really honestly a challenge and something I dealt with a lot in 2020 and 2021. So I see nothing wrong with writing out little affirmations that might seem silly, but honestly, saying them to yourself alone or writing them out, it is very impactful. So I recommend whether you have a wellness journal or just do it on a sticky note or whatever. And I talked about improving the inner monologue. The last thing that I also mentioned a little bit at the beginning of this segment is just showing up as the person you want to be. And I know I just said you don't need to change yourself. I'm just saying when you really reflect on what makes you happy, who you want to be, thinking about you, yourself, not thinking about who someone else wants you to be or how you can be more like another person, just like what would be the best version of yourself, the self that you would be the most proud of, the self that is living the life you want to live. Like show up as that person, take steps every single day that this best version of yourself would do, and that's what I'm going to try to do in 2022. And the last thing is just something I kind of fell off the wagon of that goes under the bubble of like daily thoughts, daily things, is to write in my little 5-year journal. It's basically you write a sentence or two about what happened that day, or you could write a gratitude, whatever. And I did it a tiny bit in 2020, a tiny bit in 2021, probably for only like a few weeks at a time in each of those years. So I would love to be more consistent with that this year because I think it would be really fun when I'm like 30 or even when I have a kid for them to look back and see 5 whole years of my life, especially such a formative time, I feel like, your young 20s. So I would love to get that filled out more consistently in 2022 so I can look back on what was going on, how I was doing and everything, who was in my life. I just think it would be really nice to have. And I can link below the journal that I have if anyone wants a specific one. I just got it off Amazon. But that is everything that I am going to focus on in 2022. I would be very interested to hear what you would like to focus on. I actually just posted it on the Instagram tonight. So depending when you listen to this episode, it might still be up on @DentalDownload Podcast Instagram page. But I would love to know what you're focusing on in 2022, whether you want to comment it on the Instagram post this week or if you want to message me privately. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. I think there is so much excitement and optimism going into a new year, and I think that's a great thing. So hopefully you are feeling good coming off of this holiday season and feeling ready for the year ahead. I wish you all the very best, and I'm looking forward to another year of this podcast.